It's been an interesting couple of months since we announced that I'd be running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And got a lot of questions during that time. Probably the two most popular ones is, what are you going to do about pause? We're going to get rid of it. And the second one is, why aren't you running for governor? Well, let's start off with that. You know, a year or so ago, after I decided that 16 years in the legislature was sufficient, I did talk with Governor Friedenthal and said, I'm thinking about running for statewide office. You know, what advice do you have? And he was very encouraging, and he said, just talk to people around Wyoming. And that's what I did most of last year. Well over 100, as I went from one community to another and just dropped in, talked to people from all walks of life and said, what do you think is important for Wyoming's future? And then just listen, did an awful lot of listening, which the governor also advised. And folks would talk in response, and they would list all kinds of issues, the economy, the environment, healthcare, wildlife, and things that were occurring locally. But almost every single one of them would eventually get around to education. And that fit my passion. That's what I pursued more than anything else in my years in the legislature. And decided that if I was fortunate enough to get elected to a statewide office, then I needed to do one thing that I could hope to make a difference in, and that was education. So that's the reason I decided to run for superintendent. And you know, the answer in folks citing education didn't surprise me all that much when you think about it. I mean, think back to our founding fathers and the principles on which they have based our country. It came from the Enlightenment era. The idea that the individual matters, that the individual has integrity and dignity and trustfulness, and that you can trust a government and its power to the individual, and that's where the rights should lie. And that's why we have the statement, you know, in our Constitution, that all men and women are created equal. Now, also, at the same time, they recognized back then that probably a few minutes after your birth, you're unequal, depending upon your status in life and your condition in life. And so what was their solution? What was their way of restoring that equality? And every one of those founding fathers cited education. Said education is what will sustain our democracy. And they based their faith upon education. And they based it, and it's still true today. Think of two of our last three presidents. Came from broken homes. Came into situations where you'd never think that they would grow up to be the most powerful person on earth. And yet they have. And both of them will tell you, and all the ones preceding them, and it's the same situation happened to them. They will tell you it was because of education. That's where the dreams of the nation lie, is in education. And we've become the greatest nation on earth as a result of education. And it started in the middle of the 19th century, when our nation decided to extend a free public education to everybody up to 18 years of age, with the encouragement that they could earn a high school diploma. We were the first nation in the world to do that. And we became a great country as a result of that. We were able to instill creativity and innovation in individuals who grew up and created the technology that has made society the way it is today. And at the same time, we created an educated workforce to implement that technology. Both are absolutely needed. And we created this incredible gap between us and the rest of the world on the educational attainment of our citizens. Well, we began to lose that gap, or that gap began to close in the 1980s and continues to close today. That's because the rest of the world is copying much of what we did. But at the same time, we have failed to push educational achievement much beyond the high school level since that time, too. So we need a renewed commitment to do so. And most of the folks who write about America in the 21st century and what the rest of this century is likely to hold for us will quickly know that we're probably going to lose our economic advantage with the rest of the world. There are a handful of countries that are going to catch up with us. And that's okay, because what they're going to do is help the United States share a burden to bring up and to raise the standard of living for most people in the world. It just simply won't be up to us. Many others will help share in that. But the one thing we can't afford to lose is the educational advantage that this country has in creativity and innovation, and we want the rest of the world to continue to send their best and brightest to this country. They don't send them to China, or they don't send them to India, or to South Africa, or to Brazil, or to Russia, or to Europe. Those countries still send them here, and we need to continue to do that. And that's important for Wyoming, too. If we don't do that in Wyoming, we're going to be in the backwater of this country's economy. And we're not going to have the opportunity to offer to our children that we have been presented to, that was presented to us. So it's very important for our economy. The economy of Wyoming and its future depends upon education and an educated workforce and creativity and innovation, much that David Wendt talked about earlier and some of the other folks who were up here. That's extremely important for us. But it's also important for our children, because more than any other thing, what's going to determine their success in life is going to be the quality of their education. Now, there's going to be an awful lot of, there's already been a lot of discussion, and there's going to continue to be an awful lot of dialogue about what's wrong with our educational system in the state right now. And that's okay. It's worth identifying those things. I already mentioned pause. But many of the folks that I've been talking to around the state of Wyoming will also mention the high dropout rate, the low graduation rate, the need for remedial work when their kids go to college in the University of Wyoming, and also the worrisome drop in the third grade reading proficiency skills. Those are all worth identifying. But folks, your next superintendent needs to get beyond that too. They need to get beyond just simple criticism. And that's what some of the folks who are running for superintendent right now end, is just with criticism. They have no vision of where we need to take our schools, where we need to take our educational system. And there has to be a positive vision. It just simply can't be a negative one. So what is that positive vision? Well, it starts with parents. And it starts with involving parents in their children's education.